Hi, it's Gadget UK here again, back for part 2 of the A2286 bridge board that kindly came from Chris Edwards. There'll be a link down below to Chris's channel. Please do check his channel out. He's a fantastic guy. It was amazing that he donated this to me, and I'm actually a Patreon of his now. It's the least I could do is support him on Patreon a little bit. So picking up from the previous video, we did a battery mod by drilling a hole in the side of the Dallas chip. I also fitted a faster CPU 20 MHz rated part. And as the video starts here, we're just benchmarking it, but the clock speed has not been increased. We're still running at 8 MHz. So let's quit out of that. Let's put this other benchmark program in. Hopefully it'll read it. It's been written on the, well, it's formatted on here and then written on my main PC via a USB floppy drive. Speedcom. Yeah, that worked. It did some weird stuff with the screen, didn't it? Yeah, so it performs like an 8 MHz AT with 14 MHz 287. That's pretty cool. What's interesting there is the FPU type is an Intel 80387. Is that 287 enhanced in some way? I mean, the 286 is very similar, almost identical to the 386. It's got a narrower address bus, I think, maybe, and maybe a 16-bit data bus instead of a 32-bit data bus. I could be wrong. Yeah, I think there's a difference on the data bus side, isn't there, between the 286 and 386, but 286 is more or less a 386. There's a difference, but yeah, if you get a fast 286 it can perform almost as well as a 386. Right, I've got a 40 MHz crystal here that I just got out the foam. Two legs broke off. I think what I'm going to do is solder some legs back on. We need to remove the main crystal here. This is 16 MHz. I'm going to fit a socket there for that crystal in order that I can accommodate the legs. And you know what, if it doesn't work, I can reduce it. And then take this 16 MHz crystal off there and fit it to the daughter board here. So there's a space here so that you can provide a crystal so that this gets 8 MHz. It can't run at any other speed. At the moment it gets divided down by the 16 MHz on the other board. Yeah. So, and then we're going to change the jumper here. So we'll start by removing the 16 MHz crystal there. Pin 1 is towards the bottom down here there, look. So I'm not sure whether it's going to work at 20 MHz, this CPU. You know, whether the board is going to be able to accommodate that. Because what I'm not sure about is whether the chipset on here is deriving its clock from that speed. Yeah, that is not desoldering. Yeah, desolder station's coming on, I think. I think while I'm waiting for the desolder station to heat up, I'm just going to cut the trace. Yeah, and I think the way I'm going to do that is just to literally just scratch here, really carefully. It can easily be joined back up with a blob of solder, and maybe a small piece of wire. That's it, I think. So I can test that on continuity, which of course means I need to just scratch the other pad a little bit because it's got a solder mask on it at the moment. Yeah, that's it, that's cut. And then we need to solder this jumper here. So I'm just going to just scratch that pad, the solder mask off it, just so that we can solder onto it. Could use a fiberglass brush, but I'm just trying to do a controlled, focused area here rather than scuff up the surrounding area with a fiberglass brush. So we may need a piece of wire to bridge that. Let's just see if we can do it with solder. There we go, we've done it with solder, look. Right, so the desolder station has had time to heat up. And it's sucking in a good way at the moment. It's probably going to be sucking in a bad way when it blocks in a minute. And I'll just carefully get onto each of these points here and give them a go. Not sure that did anything, to be honest. Similarly. to drive you around the twist. Yeah, that worked. It's going to be a miracle if this works after doing all this faffing around. And I'm trying not to just wrench it off. Let's just heat that on pin. That's it, crystal's off. And then it's unblock that hole again. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea to get a socket on. Right, so I got 2 sockets here. I'm going to fit 2 actually. I'm going to fit 1 on each of these boards, I think. And we're just going to remove the excess pins, so it's just the corner pins. Yeah, so pin 1 was down here, wasn't it? So I'll get the socket on in that correct orientation. I know some people don't like sockets. You can get loose connections and things, but it's going to be fine, I'm sure. And of course it's easy to revert, isn't it? If this doesn't work now, I can just put the 16 MHz crystal back in here, change that jumper over, and we're done. Right, so this one wants the 40, which is missing pins, so we'll deal with those pins in a minute. But what we can do is clean up after ourselves. So clean up with cotton buds and 99.9% IPA. And of course having sockets here just supports I don't know, future endeavours. If anyone wants to revert it back, it's easy to do, isn't it? And likewise, if someone wants to clock it further or change the frequency, you know, I might need to do that. I might need to drop from 40 to 33 because there may be a relationship to the chipset on here, and doubling the CPU speed to 20 could mean that, I don't know, maybe one of the Amiga chips doesn't work or something on this. You know, the Commodore branded things. There's something strange going on there. Yeah, anyway, that's it. Let's just have a look with a magnifier. Yeah, so that's alright, but there is a bit of solder mask removed there, and it's probably the desolder station that's done that, actually. So, that's that board sort of done with. It just needs the crystal, doesn't it? But what we can do now is fit the 16 MHz one. I'm going to do the same thing, so let's just prepare this socket, and I can remove all these pins out of the way. And you could argue maybe turn pin socket is better for these crystals with the round pins, but you know, they're going to have little bits of solder and stuff on them and stuff as well, and they're going to be tight enough to just hold in place. But you'd want to be careful pulling them out if they've got bits of solder on them. So I think pin 1 is down here, isn't it? Not sure why that one's not going on. Pin's bent a bit here. Let's try that again. There we go. So yeah, it's a bit tight around there with that resistor pack behind it, but I think that'll be alright. So let's just solder that on. And the other thing I'm not sure about, now we're set at 20 MHz, what happens with the FPU? It's probably rated to like 12.5 or something. Will it run at 20? I don't know. Could kill the FPU. What I'm not trying to do here is overclock. I'm not trying to overclock. If it was overclocking, I would have just left the original CPU on and gone to, you know, from 16 to put 20 MHz crystal in just to bump it up by a couple of megahertz. But that isn't what I'm doing. We've got a faster CPU. We've got the fastest 287 I think you can get. There might be a WeTech one or Cyrix or something like that. Anyway, you get the idea. So I'm just going to straighten these marginally. So this is the 16 MHz. This is going to go on the daughter board here. I've lost where it is now. There we go. Yeah, we've pinned one down to the bottom. We've got our jumper in place. And that's it. Our crystal's in, and it's nice and firm. And I'm just checking where our break was in the middle there, because you know what, I don't want to join all this stuff up. I'm going to scratch the pad to the right. There we go, just so that we got more exposed, in order that if I test on connectivity again, I can be 100% certain that we have cut that trace. Yeah, that one's joined there, that's correct. The left one isn't. Yeah, so let's get these back together, because the crystal, oh, hang on, that's that's annoying. I didn't think of that. Look at this here. This standoff is right where the crystal is. So we can remove that, can't we? We're not going to need it. Technically, it could touch the top of the crystal. Might need to just stick something over that crystal. And the way these work, they're like those PC case standoffs, aren't they, where you squeeze the plastic things together like that, and then it'll sort of pull out. You know what? If this works, I could always just remove that socket and solder it straight on, and then I can put this back. That's it. That should then pull out, I think. There we go. Right, we're going to have to go with the 33. I'll order a 40 if this works. Honestly, there's more chance of the 33 working, to be honest, I think. Not in terms of the CPU, but in terms of the board itself and the FPU. So let's just go with the 33, because the legs are alright on this one, although a bit dirty. So, yeah, pin 1 was down at the bottom, wasn't it? So if we get that into position, there we go. And then we may need a piece of tape on it or something, just because I'm not sure if it's going to short when this goes on there. Yeah, if you look where that is, those 2 points there, I think I'm just going to stick a tiny piece of tape over the edge of that, just in case those pins short. Let's give it a try. Yeah, it's not even touching that, is it? It doesn't need that tape. Right, so I'll clean up the bench, get the board back on here. So this bit is at the end, the discontinuity here, in the sense that you can see that the crystal is soldered on at this point. That's what I do towards the end there. But I thought it was just worth showing you these jumpers up close. So that was the one we cut, the first one. You know, there's little 2 pads, and there's a little trace in between, and we just cut that with a knife, and then we soldered a blob over the 2 points there. Right, let's see if that works or not. Could open Janus library, that's not good. So I'll try and reseat it. Yeah, that's not working, and I think 33 megahertz here is too fast. That's what I think the issue is. So yeah, I'm just going to bend this out a bit like that. There we go. In order to get that crystal out. Let's go down from 33 to 20. So yeah, that's a slight increase, isn't it? I reckon that should at least work. Assuming I've not messed something up here. Alright, it's not going well this. I've not even got any 20 megahertz crystals. I've got a 16 here, so let's just put 16 back in. So it's not going to be any faster, is it? But what it might be is working. It could be something as simple as the socket is not good. Right, I think that's going to work again at 16 because it didn't freeze after the LED stopped flashing just before the desktop popped up. Yeah, there we go. So 16 works again. So we haven't gained anything there. All we've done is, that's not a boot disk, is it? All we've done is separate the 2 clocks. So it's good in that sense now that, you know, the crystal could just be changed. I may have a 20 megahertz that's like a 4-pin crystal, but that's not going to fit, is it? I might be able to bodge one in there just temporarily. I might try that. Yeah, you can see what I mean here. It's square instead of rectangular. I might just be able to, I was going to say bend the pins out. I don't think they'll bend. Well, they're quite long though, actually, so I might be able to. Might be able to just bend these outwards. Right, I've wedged a cotton bud under there just to hold that. Let's see what happens. So there's probably little point in trying to fit a faster 286 on there, really, because you could probably overclock the 286 by the 2 megahertz we're going to gain here. Because even though it's 4 megahertz faster, you know, it's 20 versus 16, it's divided by 2, so we're going to gain 2 megahertz over the original. It didn't error about Janus there, so I think that's worked actually. So find out. Yep, there we go. So let me get a boot disk. 4058. So the time dates remaining okay. E to exit. You can hear it seek there, and then it's doing something different this time. But that is booting. It'll come up with the work thing now. And it's amazing how long that takes, look. I don't know why. Right, so that's running now the setup for DOS. I really need to get a hard disk set up next, don't I? See, this is all this flashing double curse thing. What's this? Is there some sort of glitch somewhere in the RAM, maybe? It could be something to do with caches on this 030 CPU. Cancel again. Yeah, so F3 to exit, F3 to exit. That should give us a DOS prompt, and then I can put my high density, hang on, Where's the DOS prompt gone? Are we scrolled down? I think we are. Yeah, we are. That's a speed com. See what that reports. And then I'll run the one that was on Toolkit, whatever it was. Calculating CPU clock speed. Where's the cursor? Let's just expand that a little bit. Yay, 10.3. Yeah, I'm sure that was 8 MHz before. And of course the FPU seems to be proportional, it shuts up. That might be why it wouldn't work when we tried. Oh, hang on, no, this is bodged up. Yeah, this is right, this is the bodge one. This is a 20 MHz crystal, isn't it? But when we tried 33, it wouldn't work. So I think I need to think about speeds in between. There's not a lot of point in me ordering a 40, because a 40 ain't going to work, even though the CPU can do 20. And of course there might be mileage in removing the FPU and seeing if we can do 20. But I think it's all about, the error with the Janus stuff makes me believe that the Amiga chips on there, that, the interface, the Zorro side to the PC hardware, those are going to get clocked up as well. That's overall going up by 2 MHz, but by the time you get up to 20 MHz, that's an extra 12 MHz over the what it's probably rated at. So I'll order a proper 20 so that one fits in the socket, but then I might try, I don't know, 24, 26, 28, and then we could give those different speeds a go there, knowing that 33 just doesn't work. I mean, I could try the 33 again, just in case. Maybe it wasn't making a good connection. I can clean up the legs with a fiberglass pen. Maybe it does work. Anyway, I'm very pleased though. I'm very pleased that all that bodgery has resulted in a working system at the moment. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do here is extend these ISA slots here to 16-bit. So, I've got some connectors here. I'll stick the pin count top left. Yeah, I got enough to do this board and my other board, and we'll just extend these both to, let's say, 16-bit. Just means if I get a sound card and VGA card and someone else, then there's going to be enough 16-bit slots there, basically. Right, so it's just a case of getting it lined up, making sure all the pins are straight. An ideal way to make sure it's absolutely perfectly straight here is to actually stick a card in. Anyway, let's just solder it, see how it goes on. And then I'm just going to flip it over, just make sure it is as straight as it could be. If you had just a fraction of a deviation there, it could make cards quite hard to get in and out. But that feels totally flat, straight and in line and everything, as it should be. I mean, it looks raised up there, but it isn't if you look down the gap there. Yeah, it's Commodore being cheapskates when they assembled these. Why not just fit 16-bit ones on there for all four? There we go. I'll get the other socket on and then I'll clean up. Just clean up around there now. Cleaning the flux away again there with some IPA. Right, let's just toothbrush that down. Cap of IPA. Just going to tilt it like this just so I don't get it absolutely everywhere up the board. And in the words of Northridge Mix, better than factory. And it actually is better than factory because they weren't on there from factory, were they? Stingy Commodore. There we go. Look at that. They look pretty good. And there we go, we now have 3 spare 16-bit slots. These do protrude just a little bit more than those. So when you've got a card in there, you could kind of just tilt at the back just a little bit. They just feel about half a millimetre higher on the plastic bit. But anyway, that'll be fine. So we've got BIOS Rev 3.6. I'm going to see if there's a later version. And we'll update the BIOS on it as well, perhaps. Just testing general stability for a while here. Everything's rock solid. You may want to recap a board like this while you're at it. Obviously it's working really well with the TF536, no issues at all. The RAM on this is obviously in the Zorro 3 address space, so it doesn't clash with this. So, this, it shows it's taking 512k, but I actually think it eats about 2 meg in terms of the slots. I want to say slots, I mean like in terms of the, the 8 meg range there. you can only accommodate in like 2 meg blocks or something like that, I think. So we could add like a Live 2 card, might try that later, and instead of getting 8 meg, it'll half to 4 meg, and then in theory I could add something else that uses another 2 meg. So, you know, there's enough expandability there to stick maybe an IDE card, you know, or a SCSI card, and a RAM board giving you another 4 meg as well, perhaps. But you need to think carefully about what cards you put in what slot, because can you see here? Things are right up to the edge of this. In theory, if I moved that cap and bent it that way or something, or even relocated it on the other side, maybe relocate this one as well, then yeah, a board would fit here, actually, maybe Live 2's board, or a SID card perhaps. Having said that, you know, it comes straight up, doesn't it? So things are going to clash with the components here, so I bet that kind of makes this slot unusable. And of course I can go one further to the left, because I haven't used the last Zorro slot there. So we've actually got 4 Zorro slots free at the moment. I mean, you've still got the same problem though. If we move it one that way, then it's still going to, you know, be an issue there. It's a shame that the ISA slot is not in line with this first slot, because I had put it in the first one, and then obviously the stuff that's sticking out on the right side of it wouldn't interfere. So at this point I decided to fit this VGA card. This kindly came from Glenn over at CRG. So please check out Glenn's channel. He's an amazing guy. He's done a lot of Amiga videos recently. But I mean, he looks at other systems as well, some Mac stuff, PC repairs and things. Yeah, so please see the links down below for Glenn's channel. And as things stand here, I had to do a number of things to this. They'll be covered in a separate video, and in the 386 series as well, actually, because I had some interesting problems with this. But the point of fitting this into the 286, this is where I'm picking up in the next clip, you'll see, where it just wasn't working at all. So the other card I needed to introduce at this point was a postcard. Yeah, not the ones you send when you're on holiday. Power on self-test card. So this is a dual purpose one. It's got an ISA slot here and a PCI slot, because they're pretty much the same thing. I think one of them is obviously faster and potentially has more connections, I think. It's 32-bit versus 16. There's a mark I've just spotted. Anyway, yeah, so at this point I fitted Glenn's card, but I needed this because it still wasn't booting. And this was actually completely useless on the 286 bridge board. What I would say, though, from my experience of fixing the 386 bridge boards, these can actually help you a lot more with the 386 cards. But the 286 one, it just gives you one code as it boots. It's so quick you don't even get a chance to see any of the codes. You just only ever see one code. The common codes for different BIOSes are documented in the manual that comes with it, but they're just so cryptic. They all vary as well. It's like you can take the code, look up in here, and it makes no sense at all. Even when it's booted, when it boots successfully and gives you a code, the code does not represent anything useful. Yeah, so I'm sorry about the crazy angles and things here. I actually don't think this is booting. I've got a 0008 on the postcard here. Yeah, we've got that on the screen. Control-Alt-Delete doesn't do anything. Control-Escape doesn't do anything. We'll try PC reset. Maybe it's been a bit sulky at 10 megahertz, you know, could be. Nope, it's not booting, is it? This is another one of these where I've spent absolutely ages messing around trying to find a fault, trying to find a solution, thinking there's a problem, thinking, oh my god, I've killed it, VGA's not working, nothing's working, all I'm getting is 0008 every single time, and there's nothing actually wrong. After enabling CGA, you can see it does boot here, yeah? The speaker isn't doing anything, which is there a speaker on it? Maybe I need to add a speaker to it. Yeah, so there's no beeps or anything, and it's not like the 386 one where you can configure it in software, but nevertheless it is actually working there. I can't believe I've spent an hour on that. Swapped the processor around a number of times, the crystals, and reseated the boards a dozen times, cleaned the CPU socket up. Because it doesn't beep, yeah, and because the postcard just shows 0008 and nothing else, you're like, oh god, it must have broken. There was no over 1 meg configuration error. No configuration loaded. What does that mean? Well, obviously the CMOS settings are wrong. I just don't get why VGA wasn't working. So let me now connect a VGA card up. They're so stressful to work on these, seriously. Because when you don't get anything, and certainly with this one, the postcodes given by that postcard are nail useless. All you see is, you know, dash dash dash, and then goes 0008. Well, I presume 0008 might be good. If you see a 0008, you know it's booted. Anyway, I've got VGA connected again. Let me retry this now. And the reason the CMOS might be messed up is because earlier I tried, I think, 26 megahertz or something. I can't honestly remember now. Anyway, let's just see if anything comes out on the VGA. Now, you'd expect it to work automatically on the VGA, and there was nothing before. So, I don't know, maybe there was a problem and I've solved it. I've been testing without the VGA card for quite a while, you see. Right, it's going 0008, but you see there's no VGA. This is the thing that's a little bit confusing to me, is why is there no VGA? Whilst it would seem to be booting, we've got no VGA coming out of this. Let me enable colour again, save. I actually think when the VGA card's in, it's not booting properly. That's what I think is happening here. Because that's PC colour. Yeah, it's not working, look. So we've got some sort of clash between the VGA card let's just check PC mono. No, there's nothing there, look. So we'll do PC prefs again. Disable colour, put monochrome on. Save. Okay. Might have changed the Janus handler. That might be the thing here. PC mono. Nothing. See, now it's not booting. And it's not booting because that VGA card's in. Let me try the other VGA card. It did cross my mind though, there may be a fault on this board that I've, you know, now becoming aware of on the ISA slot, maybe, you know, the buffering for the ISA expansion slots here. And that might be why we're seeing 0008, because there's nothing else going. Oh, hang on, it's working. Yeah, it's working. So that shows, I don't know, an incompatibility with that other VGA card, even though that VGA card works better with the 386 board. So I don't know, it's all really confusing to me. Let's now go back to PC prefs. I mean, it's good it's got that 384K of extended there. Not that you can do much with it. You can load DOS high. Let's see if it now boots from the same hard disk image we've been using with the A2386. That's one thing I do like about this Janus stuff. You don't need to configure it when you install it. It just, you know, you can swap between the 286 card, unplug that, put the 386 card in. Hang on, famous last words, because now it's not doing anything, is it? What I was going to say is you can swap between the 286 card and the 386 card. You don't have to do anything. You just don't have them in the same machine, obviously, because they'd be killing the buses. Two of these cards can't coexist, even two from the different generations. You can't have like an XC card and a 386 card, or a 286 or a 386 together. That is not doing anything, is it? We'll try Control-Alt-Delete. And even that isn't doing anything. So we've got some sort of issue. Control-Alt-Escape. So let me check. So it's got the right time date there, that's good. Disk drive, none. Video, colour, special. I think that needs saying, doesn't it? Co-processor. Yeah, so everything's there. I don't think you need to set hard disk. Maybe you do. It's different on the 386. Now let's do E, update CMOS and reboot. I'm guessing that should just boot straight from the hard disk if everything's working correctly, but it may need a power cycle. Because when you change anything to do with those video adapters, the MDA and the CGA, trust me, weird things can happen, and sometimes you do need a power cycle before it'll actually acknowledge the fact that you've disabled it properly. Certainly after installing and setting up VGA, yeah, that's the thing, changing the display options around, having a VGA card in there, you then have to power cycle it. You'd think PC Reset would solve that, but I don't know, for whatever reason it doesn't. I guess PC Reset is not a panacea. You think you're really resetting everything, you're resetting most of the stuff there, but not quite everything. Right, we've got 0008, yep, let's boot in. No, it's hitting the hard disk now. Yep, it's flashing, there you go. So I was right, you do need to power cycle it, that is exactly what the problem was. So much slower than the 386, it really is. I'm noticing it big time. Even on disk access like, it takes a lot longer. Right, hang on, I've not got keyboard focus. Yeah, that is a lot slower. I mean, look how slow it is at updating the screen there when I did that. Try Prince of Persia, I'm not sure if that's going to work. Hang on. On a 286 it should do, I think. Because I'm pretty sure I played it on a 286 first of all. I played it in monochrome, actually. Monochrome VGA. Because even though I had VGA, the same card, a Trident, my first monitor was a monochrome VGA display. Yeah, it's not too bad, is it? It's not quite as nippy as on a 386, but it's more than playable. It's just how I remember it, really. The animation on this game is so amazing. It's really fluid. So maybe I didn't test this right before, because you know what, it's now running with the 24 MHz crystal. I don't know, I'm wondering now. Maybe I was looking at the postcard and that was confusing me, thinking it hadn't booted because it was just showing 0008. But nevertheless, with the 24 MHz crystal, which means we're now running at 12 MHz versus 8, so we're going 50% faster. We do have the 20 MHz CPU back on. So I don't know, let's just test this out. This is going to be amazing if this works. Might be able to go beyond this. I might actually be able to go all the way up to, put a 40 MHz crystal and go all the way up to 20. I don't think so though. I think the RAM's not going to be fast enough of anything. And hang on, this might be where it freezes. Yeah, I think this is the issue. So it's the memory. If I put faster memory on there, I think 120 is not fast enough. So that might be the thing I need to do. I might revisit this in another video because it's going to be time consuming to solder all the chips there, and I need to get some more of that RAM, I think. But I think we'll have a go at that in another video. I may just visit the schematics in that video and have a look at stuff around the RAM and just see if there's anything else that may need changing. For example, let's say you've got some 74 LS245s somewhere there or something like that, or 24, well, yeah, 245s probably. Then there may be benefit in changing them to F245s or ALS 245s maybe. Anyway, yeah, so that doesn't work. It's just hanging on the RAM, isn't it? That is the problem. I bet this part, you know, the Faraday or whatever it is chipset they're using here, is probably spec to, I don't know, 12 or 16 MHz at most, maybe even 10. Yeah, so back to 20 MHz crystal, everything is working again, and I'm not going to tempt anything. I'm just going to leave that super fast CPU in there, and at some point we'll revisit. I'm curious to see if any games behave like, well, we've tried Prince of Persia, let's try Wolf 3D. That's going to be pushing it a little bit, certainly at a 10 MHz one. Because I think when I had a 286 when I was younger, I'm pretty sure mine was either 12 or 16 actually. Well, it's loaded okay. I mean, what I'm going to be doing this, I'll get a sound card alongside it and play some Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, I think. You only need 640k for that, so that should be alright. And yeah, so definite difference there. That is much faster on the 386. It's like half the frame rate. Yeah, I think the bottleneck here, hang on, why is it turning its own? Yeah, that was weird. It started turning on its own, I think, after I pressed shift and left at the same time. I forgot what I was going to say now, the bottleneck. Yeah, I think the bottleneck is the RAM. That's what I think it is. When I look at the RAM that's on this compared to the RAM and chipset that supports that RAM on the A2386, the RAM on there I would think is about twice as fast at least. That's what it is. You know, the RAM on here is 120 nanoseconds. That's insanely slow, really. Versus the hang on, it's rotating on its own again. Look, it's some sort of issue where if you press shift and right and shift or left, it just rotates. It spins around on its own. Look how slow that is. But you know what? It's more than playable. Right, so you can see I've bodged on a speaker there. But you know what, it fits. If I power that on now, you will hear we do have sound, it's at a good level. and it's just a good way of being able to determine what's going on. You hear it beep when it boots. I'm quite surprised they didn't just fit something on the board actually and have a jumper to switch it off or on maybe. You know, and looking at the schematics I can see the jumper's there to change the time in a DMA. I think as default it's half the CPU clock speed. You can also change the RAM slightly, I think from 50 nanoseconds, or it might be RAS, to 75. I don't really see how that would benefit if we, you know, clocks this faster than 10 megahertz. The main chip on there, the one under here, it's like FE3000A, I think it is rated at 10 megahertz. So I actually don't think you can go much really beyond 10 megahertz. If you're really lucky, you might get 12. But I think we'll need to swap out the RAM to do that. And I was looking at the RAM, you heard it beep then. I was looking at the RAM. There's two different types of RAM here actually. There's 8 of, you know, the main type, and then there's some ones up here which I presume might be for parity. Can't see what else they're for really. But anyway, we've got PC speaker now, so if I go into speedcom again, as it does at speed test, it should beep. So there might be advantage. Where are those beepers coming from? Why would you get a beep when you do a directory? Maybe there's an issue with this card, because it should be beeping. That is weird, isn't it? Maybe they're making it beep the speaker when it reads the IDE. You know, it's connected from the Amiga side. There's like an audible way that you can hear it's accessing the hard disk. I don't know, that's a bit strange. Anyway, the speaker is working, but it seems that whenever you hit the disk, it beeps the speaker as well. It's good having sound, but not sound of the IDE. Having said that, it's hitting the IDE now and now it's not doing it. So I don't know what that's all about actually. You hear it silent now. Is that though because the speaker's been switched off? Like here. Like now it's back on, will we hear IDE? No we don't. It's flashing the IDE and we're not getting that beeping. So, I don't know. I think that's why they didn't put a speaker on it. Yeah, so we're on knee cam again. You can see I've got a piece of heat shrink here, black heat shrink, and I'm just putting it over there to cover up the solder points on the underside. Like that. There you go. It almost looks like a made one, doesn't it? It's going to look like it was designed for it. That'll do. Yeah, it's not very ESD safe on my knee. Anyway, so let's just try and work out where best to fit it. You know, it could fit here, couldn't it? It could squeeze right on the end of the board there. And I actually think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just stick it here. I mean, technically it might interfere with a case or something if you stuck it in a cased machine. And I might be putting this in my cased 2000. If that cap's annoying. Stick it there like that. That makes more sense, doesn't it? And then it's not really protruding very much from the edge. With the VGA card that I upgraded the BIOS on, I don't know whether that's going to work or not. I think I might need to use the other Trident because, yeah, these two cards, only one of them works with this 286 board. But we've got the Sound Blaster in there that hasn't booted, I don't think, unless it's like exceedingly slow at booting. So I removed this Trident card, which I would say is a better card. I mean, it's cheaper in terms of the RAM and stuff here, but it's got a lot more passives. You know, there's a lot more decoupling and attention to detail on signal integrity and stuff there versus the one that's in now, which is a bit odd. I'd kind of expect the one I've just tried that didn't work to work more than the one that's in, because the one that's in, well, there's a lot less components on there. It's the same chipset. And somehow that one works. It must be a trace layout thing. Yay, so it's detected the Sound Blaster. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough RAM here, actually. This might be the problem, because there's no expanded or extended memory available here. Yeah, let me just turn it up a wee bit. Sweet. You can hear that slow down a bit there. Turn up a bit. So, yeah, very slow. Bear in mind we're running at 12 megahertz, aren't we? I really need mouse enabled. Oh god, this is so slow. I think you can make the screen smaller, can't you? Hang on, I'm rotating round crazily here. What's going on with the controls? Honestly, that was as painful as it looked. Let's just see if there's a way to shrink the screen down. Yeah, that's a lot better. Still a bit jerky, but almost as good as the 386 SX25. Yeah, a bit slow there. Oh, hang on. Yeah, sometimes with this, if you hit left, it keeps going left. I don't know what that is. It's doing it there, look. And if I hit left, it stops. How many times have you got to shoot him? I'm sure I hit him about 5 times then. Oh god, did you see that? As I'm going left, right, it's like 1 minute I'm the right side of him, the left side of him, the right side of him, the left side of him. That's the problem with keyboard. Yes, this seemed a good point to try and use the mouse. So with the bridge board came 2 discs. You had the Janus disc, which we installed in part 1. We used version 2.1, and that's what I'd recommend. But then you also got a PC formatted floppy disk, I think, that contained some utilities that you need to, run on the PC side. So like once I installed DOS on the C drive, I'll show that in the next video. I realise there's been a bit of jumping around here. We've already been booting off a hard disk here, we've got a C drive. The Amiga is providing that drive, yeah, via a flat file sat on Workbench somewhere, on my Workbench drive, on one of the volumes on there. It's just like a 32 megabyte file that is a virtual C drive. Now the performance of that is not great, we'll have a look at that in the next video, but it's pretty good with the TF536. In any case, I copied all the files off that PC Janus disk onto a folder there and put that in the path. So when we pick up in a minute, you'll see I just type a mouse at the prompt, press return, and it loads a mouse driver in DOS. And looking at a page from the manual here, you can see that there, amouse.com, a Microsoft compatible mouse driver. But there's also a couple of other drivers, this amouse2.drv and amouse3.drv. The first of those is a Windows 286 compatible mouse driver. And then a Microsoft Windows 3 mouse compatible driver, which I assume will probably work with Windows 3.11 and stuff as well. Amouse it is. So that loads a mouse driver at the PC side, but this automatically detects that. It says mouse serve 2 on second port. So this is where if you've got 2 mice, that would be useful. If I swap the mouse over to the right hand port, so of course it's doing nothing on the Amiga, but it's now functional on the PC side. If I now go into edit, because I think that supports mouse, doesn't it? And I can show you that the mouse is actually working, because that's going to have enough base memory, hopefully. It's amazing how long edit took to load though. Look, I can use the mouse, the Amiga mouse. How cool is that? That is really good. Of course, I will need to have a second mouse on the table. Anyway, let's just see if it works with Wolf 3D, or in fact, let's just see how much base memory we've got now. Maybe about 550k-ish or something, maybe. 579, we might be alright. I'm already in the Wolf 3D folder, what am I doing? So let's try that now with a mouse. Let's just see if it's any better. Hang on, maybe control is set to keyboard or something. Control. There we go, mouse enabled. No, hang on. actor game. Right, let's try the mouse now. Hey, it works. It's not very sensitive, so back out to the menu again. It's determined to make me quit. There we go. Well, the right button doesn't open doors, which is weird, isn't it? You'd think the right mouse button would open the doors. And despite the sensitivity being maxed out here, it doesn't feel very sensitive. Yeah, it's still a little bit slow, you know. It really needs more memory, if anything. Because then you wouldn't get the pauses while it loads stuff in, probably. There's a guy here, isn't there? Secret there, get the machine gun. Anyway, I'm pleased it's working. I'll probably end up using this machine for things like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, which I did play on a 286 of about this spec back in the day. Yeah, ignore the noise coming through the sound card there. It's actually because of the awful amplifier on it. You know, it's one of these where it's got a stupid USB power adapter, and I've worked out it's that USB power adapter's created a lot of noise. So huge thanks to Glenn for sending this Trident card. At the end of the next video, part 3, you'll see we got this card working, I think, with the 286, and it works better with the 286 versus the 386 cards, as you'll see in the 386 series. But nevertheless, thank you very much, Glenn, for sending me that. Yeah, and there'll be a separate video on this, and where's it gone? That. Both of those Trident cards had a number of things done to them. And both now are really, really solid. And then also in this video we covered the Sound Blaster, didn't show it, but that's a repair as well. I bought that faulty. And an ad lib card, that's just briefly shown in part 3, I think, just to test it alongside the 286, because I'm not sure whether I'm going to use this with the 286 card or that, because I've got a 386 card now. I'm not sure which to stick with which. Really, I should stick this with the 386. It's more, you know, it's later, isn't it, than just basic ad-lib. But anyway, that was a repair as well, and this came from William. So huge thanks to William, it's incredible. So again, the video was getting a wee bit long. I'm sorry there was so much Wolfenstein stuff within this video, but you know what? It's a cool game. I've got a lot of nostalgia for it. I'm sure other people have as well. Yeah, so the speaker here, could it be better mounted? Probably, because it's just mounted with a bit of sticky Velcro stuff. So yeah, there's a few bits of dust on there. It might be better just using a double-sided sticky pad, because then it'd be a bit more sturdy. And I just curled the wire, and it does go onto the 2-pin header there. And looking at the service manual for this, that is a speaker connector. So I think that the B pin that's coming along, you know, when you access the virtual C drive, I know I didn't show you how to set that up. Covering that in the next video as well. It's pretty easy to do. It's a pretty short thing, but there's just so much already in this video. Yeah, you can see here that there's a chip socketed that wasn't socketed before, so that's covered in the next video. We were running at the back end of this video here with a 24 megahertz crystal, so 12 megahertz was working. Now you'll note we tried that earlier and it wasn't, and it seems to be, once it's warmed up, it'll run at 12. When it's cold, it'll struggle for the first minute or two. You can keep resetting it, and it works. Yeah, and I was theorising that maybe the RAM speed here might have something to do with that. So I've got some 60 nanoseconds RAM. This is marked -12, 120 nanoseconds. So I'm going to fit some 60s there in the next part as well. That's the 1 megabyte. I think this is parity. Can't be anything else, I don't think. And I hear what you're saying. You're thinking video RAM or, you know, shared RAM. It's not. This is the shared RAM here. You have 128K. Just like you do on the 386 card. And I think these ICs may be very, very similar. Certainly this one, I think it might have a 5719 or a 5718. I'm not sure the other card, the 386 card. And I've got 2 of those 386 boards coming up. Got both of those working now. So yeah, those should be pretty interesting to look at, I think. This chip here, I think, though, might be bespoke to this. But I'll talk more about these chips in the next video, and we'll have a look at the overall schematics, and we'll have a look at some of the other chips on this card as well, and how the functionalities perhaps spread between these two boards, just to help you better understand if you get a fault on one of these. Because I did a lot of digging into the 386 board, and even though this looks a lot more complex because it's got this sub PCB here versus the 386 board, it's very, 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 very similar, if not identical. They just use different chips, different chipset, obviously a 386 versus a 286, but you've got the same RAM, a different type of RAM, different types of chips, but the same logical, you know, arrangement. Commodore just used different chips, and because of the chipset reduction on the 386, you know, you didn't need this large board here. And the floppy controller, sorry, that's the floppy controller. And as you'll see in the 386 video, the floppy controller on this, you know, it's a large 40 pin, I think, dip. By the time it came to the 386 card, it's a tiny little square PLCC chip that sort of sits in this area up here, and they managed to fit everything on the one board without this subboard on the 386 cards. Anyway, I do hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel, please see the Ko-fi and Patreon links down below. I'll catch you in the next video.